Welcome to our special bonus episode. As you can see, it's going to be a little bit different today because, first of all, I'm sitting here and Vasek is not here. And instead, we have here Joanna Nowak.
Hello.
Who is an art historian and historical consultant for Warhorse Studio, who made a game, Kingdom Come Deliverance, that you might hear about. We talked about it, I think, in our bonus episodes for sure. And the game, it's just, maybe if you don't know, if you are just a fan of history and you're not fan of video games, let's just give you a little bit of context. What is Kingdom Come Deliverance as a game, and like what makes it different with other titles that are outside?
So Kingdom Come is about a son of a blacksmith that is living in the center of Bohemia. He needs to decide if he's about to make a change. And he agrees. So he is starting his journey, and he becomes something more than just the son of the blacksmith. And what makes this game definitely different is that we really put a lot of effort to show the medieval times in the center of Europe as much precisely as it was possible according to what we had. We really try to follow the sources, the information that would give you a really deep look and immersion to live through his journey as if you were in the medieval times with him.
So was there any part of history that when you joined in, or maybe even with the second game, where from other people in the department, they were like, we really want this to be accurate. We really want to pay attention. Like, this is something that we are really passionate and we want it to be 100%, historically perfect. Was there anything like that?
Yes, because this is the most funny thing, I guess, and this is what makes this all people who work right now in Warhorse to actually join it, because each one of them, even if they don't know are not expert at many things about history, but each one of them has this one thing that they really love about the medieval world, and they exactly pay the most attention to make this one very, very accurate. And that's really funny because there are so different ways. Like, there are people who love horses and they really wanted to make super duper accurate parts of the saddle and every kind of a harnesses and stuff, even though it caused us a pain in the ass and head and every part of the body, because it's lots of physics and animations and stuff. But this was their thing that they really wanted. Then there were other people who are absolutely crazy about the weapon. So even each tiny little stitch making, they were but I want this one to be this exactly. And I was like, okay, so you are not really paying attention of what is happening at that scene, but this is important. Yes. There were even guys asking me, hey, I am about to do the model of a pile of hay, or some kind of even just some dry grass or some food for pigs. What did they eat? And I was like, what? Are you seriously asking me what medieval pigs have eaten? And I was like, this is so not important. You would just make some kind of a grains, but if there will be a close-up of the camera. And I was like, really? That's, or there were guys that were trying to make it super believable, sounds from, inn or tavern. And, that was what they would be doing the sounds. And I was like, oh, okay. This is important for you, I understand. But maybe for me, I won't be telling that, I can't tell you that. You can do it as you want it. It's I don't have any proof, or any kind of argument that would give you this assurance that it is or it isn't historically accurate.
Yeah,
this is not my field of expertise.
To be honest, I can imagine that must be a thing that a lot of the time happens, right? You have a lot of information, but you're also missing a lot of information, and you just have to fill the blanks.
Exactly.
So I guess that is a part of your job too, just to create that educated guess.
Yes, and not everyone likes it, right? Because if they do something, exactly, and there's short time, and I don't have much time for making a proper profound research, and it's of course also not possible because I'm alone and project needs to go. I cannot have 10 years to really dig into the ground and see what happens,
what medieval pigs ate.
Exactly. And make some kind of experiments of what would be proper food for pigs. But there are moments where we can actually just really sit, and I'm like, hey, I've checked what you asked for, and I don't have 100% true answer because there really weren't 100 of pieces of something that would prove that something happened or was made this way. But I can assume by making this, I always call it, it's like a likelihood, or making this kind of a research that is around some area at proper time frames, and by comparison I can tell you that the most probable would be this and this. And then they say yeah, but and they are also not sure, and then it's hey, you can do with this information what you want. I can only give you an inspiration. I'm not the creative director that would give you yes or no. If you have doubts, just ask them. I cannot give you, and I also cannot say that you are wrong if you make it up, because I can't. And then usually we try to figure out what just suits best for the story.
So when it comes to video games, obviously you cannot make it 100% accurate. There always have to be some compromises. So what do you think is the biggest compromise in Kingdom Come Deliverance, that if, this would be simulation, that you would like to change?
There are many things, actually, because, the technology, it doesn't still give us this kind of possibilities to make it super immersed. You always know that this is a game, right? Because we just see that the time had to be somehow, and time and the space. The two basic things that gives us this feeling that we are here in the presence and we are living the moment. And they in the game, unfortunately, has to always be changed, because you have fast travel, you have sleeping that you can skip. There is summer or spring, but you cannot make just this really changing daily sun rising up and coming down. That's just, even the sky. We had the guys, they really tried to make the, stars and sky looking at the possible time, but we don't have an exact date in the game when it happens, right? We have some information from the history that we wanted to include, burning the Scalids, which is written in the chronicle, pages, that it's 22nd and 23rd of March, blah, blah, blah. But we cannot. And the same space. If we could, probably we would love to recreate all of the details 1-to-1, meter-to-meter from the Czech Bohemian land. Yeah. But it's impossible. We had to somehow, in some ways, here stretch it, here narrow it a little bit. And we know that people were oh no, this is taking much more to get from Rataj to Kuttenberg, but you made it just this. And it's yes, we know, but it's just impossible. The engine cannot still make it 1-to-1. And the time, we would have to then make each of this game for 20 years. Yeah. And probably and because making a game, it's always by part making, so it's kind of a sectors. So probably the first sector that would be done, would have to be redone by the end when the last one would be, because already at that point the technology would change, and then we wouldn't be satisfied with the outcome. So these are the things that I would start with, but I think I don't have really influence on that.
Yeah.
What can you do?
So, but was there a thing where, the developers decided for something and, your red lights just started to flicking and it's just like, no. This is like, this is not how it is. Like, you really cannot do it this way.
Yeah, like I was very angry about blue clothing appearing in the game. But we made the compromise in the end because the people will start to like me. But like in the manuscripts, illuminations, there are some, and still there are some like researchers showing that there were like this. It's kind of a plant that you can use to make the clothing blue, but the shades or probable blue color that was at that time the result of this like dye in the cloth wasn't this super intensive lapis lazuli blue that we see sometimes in the game. And I was absolutely like, I don't want to say like angry or like passionate about it, but I really tried to convince everyone like not to do it, not to put it too often at least. But they still tried to put it everywhere they could, like to the because then it comes many this like playable rules that we have, and they are not intended to be considered as 100% historically accurate, but just more like a thing that is done for the game's sake. So it means like we have these fractions of, like some armies. And if we had already like guys that were having armor and clothing that was more like yellowish ones, red ones, green ones, then suddenly it came out that we have another one and we need to give them something. And they really wanted to give them these blue ones. And I was like, no, really, this like for this purpose of, like having clothes that will be, torn in the war, they wouldn't dye it blue. But they said, yeah, but, the player needs to see the difference, that they are finding, two fractions of different armies. And I said, okay. But it was very hard for me. Very, very hard. They know absolutely how I am like sick of blue color. Like whenever it is happening, I'm like... I'm really like feeling the pain.
I'm just thinking like he doesn't have it on the art here, but I'm not sure like if he doesn't have like blue clothes on the main cover actually. But
Henry is not a problem.
Yeah,
but there's Katherine.
And
Katherine has blue dress, and she's like a maiden. She's like a helper, and it's like, but. We cannot say that she's looking bad in it. She looks really nice and sexy, and it's like. Okay. And at least I need to say, and I need to give this like absolute gratitude to all my friends in character department and everything, that at least they try to give her this like shade of blue that is like much more probable than like, super intensive, that one is like in illuminations. The Katherine one is still a little bit less saturated and so on. So
yeah,
they tried.
So speaking of clothing, apart from the color blue, how do you think that the game represents it? Are you happy with the style of clothes in the game?
Yes. Like I must say that really I always try to praise because the guys from the concept art and 3D artists that were dedicated to make clothing, they really did amazing job. We really started so many years ago trying it all out, and not only the software really changed, but all of that effort from their own like hearts to get deeper into history. They really tried to find out on their own many things, and they were asking me about, patterns, sewing, stitches, and exactly the shades. We were discussing it so many times, and they were always open to like have some kind of a discussion or like to maybe change something, and it was really great cooperation. So I'm absolutely stunned how from like, such a small department, they could make such an enormously important part very, very well. I know that there are some things that we had to, again, like bit modificate because of some limits we had to face. Of course, sometimes just things weren't, super deeply thought through because we had some limited time or so. But still, I think they put all of their heart and effort there, and they included me in this process very, very much. Like they really trying to be there with me, be on the one side, understand it, and I'm very proud of how it looks like.
So also when it comes to structures like houses and churches and castles, how did that go? Again, was it like challenging or, again, it's constantly, it's that dance between how it was historically in reality and how did you made it into a game?
Yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging because there are some sources for like maybe 50% of the buildings, but then for the next 50% there aren't any. And I mean by that not only that there are no ruins, but not even like drawings, nothing. Many of the mentions from that period of time that we found about some fortresses or like some estates, there has not left, there is no left, even a stone or some kind of a drawing, graphics, not at all. So many things we had to really like rethink and try to establish as much closely to the history. So it was interpretation from whole the beginning. And we asked experts about many things. But then, of course, we had that in my mind that while making KCD1, we already established some kind of a, how to say it, like a hierarchy, like that you have, you see the countryside, but the biggest place there was like, of course, monastery in first part and Rataj. And if Rataj already, the small town looked like this, then if we are going to make like city, it needs to be bigger. And of course, it means that we have to, again, put the ledge a bit higher, the level up. And it doesn't mean that for historians, that would be actually changing buildings so much. But for the visual part, for the meaning, for the cause of the game, of making it interesting for the players, we had to. So it required a lot of research. And I was lucky for the second part that our teams were joined also by architects, and they helped me a lot to like recreate it. And actually Petr Bouška, my friend who is with me right now also in Warhorse, he really took on his shoulders a lot of responsibility by taking Kutna Hora in his hands. Like we were co-working together, but mostly he is responsible for, making it look as it is right now, of course, with cooperation of our team and art director. But it was a huge process of gathering information and again, like making it believable and keeping in mind that, if one thing we show like this, then the other needs to be in some kind of a contrast or like must have something interesting to show, to be memorable, to be easy to find on map. And as well, it needs to fit to the period of time. So, and another thing, there is a lot of wooden architecture, and really there is not much left of it until today, right? Yeah. So we had to again make like our estimations, not only about the construction, because that is something that we have already information, but about like amount of houses, amount of agriculture buildings, and still including things that will be for the gameplay. So it means like some crafts, like some special meals, like buildings that would be, used for the story. And that was really like, I think this is like very engineering, designing, thinking, and it required really a lot of effort. So whenever I could some kind of a help, I was trying to figure out how, again, like similar buildings or like places looked at that time where we have some kind of a recollection of it. But in many cases, we just really had to make it our own. So
Your version. It's like, it sounds like absolute headache, to be honest, because like it's so many things that you have to think about. It's exactly, it's not just about like, okay, guys, this is how it looked. Now recreate it. It's like, it needs to be functional for the game too. And like,
and each kind of a building had to exactly not only just look, but be functional for the game purposes, also like by measurements. So it means that also like these, like we couldn't just make one house small and one big. No, they all had to get this, meet these requirements of whole movement, of NPCs, of animals, of things like physics and like weather. And still, while playing the games, by how many bugs are appearing that we couldn't like even think of so many situations that can still happen. And, it's a lot. That's why so many people has to work on it day and night and test it and test it and test it, because even though we can have some kind of a vision, it still needs to be best proposal for the game, not only like simulation or like stable, just a model.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned Kuttenberg. That is in the second game. I must say, because I've been to Kuttenberg many times in the real one, and when I went there in the game, it was really interesting moment, because I don't think I ever played a game that I've known the place so well in reality, and now I'm in the medieval version of it, and I can walk the streets and I can recognize like, oh yeah, this is like where usually we go to coffee, and this is where we go for lunch, and this is the gift shop, and it's just it's so well done, and like my hats to you. Like,
that's so nice. I actually had the totally opposite situation, that for so many years I've been looking at it through the game, and last year I went to Kuttenberg after some time, and I was like having this stroll through the town, and I was almost crying, because I felt so touched that this is exactly when I'm in the game, and here and every moment can come Henry or something. I don't know. I was having tears in my eyes, like, because I know about all the things that of course we could do better. This is like always this, thing that you wish you had more time or people or something. But then suddenly it struck me like, oh my God, we did so much. Like we really tried so hard to give people this kind of a feeling. And I'm really like in Kuttenberg, and I don't know if I'm in the game or I'm in real. It's like, it was amazing. Yeah. Like I was really touched. I immediately wrote to Victor Herschel, our art director, that Victor, I'm in Kuttenberg. I can't, stop looking at the buildings, and I feel like I'm in the game. Like, wow, we really did such a good job. I was praising ourselves, but it was like so amazing.
You definitely deserve it. So like, definitely. I had like something, sorry, it's just very out of script, but I had like a very similar situation also when we went to Truski, the castle Truski. And we went there after I played during the playtest that it was. And it was like really cool moment when you're standing in the, where it used to be the courtyard, and you see the ruins, and you're just like seeing what it was in the game, and it's just blends, like you exactly know where the things were. And it's great feeling to have something like this. I really didn't experience it in any other game, so yeah.
Me too. Like that's what I love. Yeah, but I wasn't really expecting that. I didn't know that we would get at this level. But yeah.
So also another thing that I think brings the medieval time really well is the interiors, because like we talked about like the structures from outside, but also the interiors. There's a scene in Kuttenberg where you're part of when all the counselors are, there's the council and they're just like talking and they have this big meeting. And I was thinking, because we are working on this podcast for quite some time, and there are obviously constantly some councils that we talk about. And it was interesting to see it in action, exactly in the interior. You could see the wooden ceiling and all the chairs and stuff. How did you approach that?
Making interiors interesting and like historic accurate, it's even more challenging because we have still limited amount of 3D models we can do. So we try to make some kind of interiors that would be reusing existing models, but in a way that player won't see it at the first sight, right? So it means that you have 10 tables, but you know that you'll put it in the 20 houses. So you need to always turn it or change the color, shading, something that it wouldn't appear at first glance that this is just repeated, right? But at these special interiors that are very unique, we have a little bit more of a space to use our, skills to make it exactly unique and special. And then we need to, of course, think, okay, this is the moment, but let's find the best kind of references. And still, there is really not so much of the preserved pieces of furniture. And so we have some kind of elements that can give us a hint. But if you follow all of the old books really regarding old furniture and everything, there is repeated amount of the photos and relations regarding some fine pieces that lasted till 20th century, right? The rest is unknown. So we need to follow much more the construction, but the detail we do it on our own. And of course, if somebody is reconstructing the furniture and so on, we just cannot go to them and hey, we would love to do 3D model based on your reconstruction, because we also don't know how much that would be usable for our game. We also still got these animations to follow and so on. Yeah. But we were lucky enough to also get some specialists, especially Mr. Kocor, who is this is Mr. Ladislav Suka, who is making Gothic furniture and also medieval, early medieval too, with this using still the traditional methods. And he is very often making reconstruction of furniture that are used in museums and all of that events that recreate medieval times. And he's a huge fan of our game. And he is also a big support for us since the whole beginning. So he really invited us many times, or he was invited by us to studio to show us pictures of his work, or the methods and tools and how he's doing, so that people who are actually making models in 3D game can do it, can follow all of the details that make it so believable from that time. So having that all in hands, we try to again create some kind of a believable inside spaces that in some time will be just reusing materials and things we know about, and sometimes having some kind of our own interpretation, but in a very smooth and sensible way. And of course, it's very difficult to make everything work properly because of that limitations for game purposes. But yeah, we try to also follow some inspiration from not only Gothic buildings that are here still in Czech Republic, but also from Germany, from Poland, asking some experts if, for example, they have still some, older drawings. I follow very much this manuscripts that have also drawing of some kind of interiors, because they are not the main thing that is shown on the picture. And by that, it also gives us much more information, because the painter or the person was much more focused on the scene of showing people or some kind of a thing. That was the main focus. And he made furniture, chair, room, I don't know, even curtains for the, separating the rooms, or making it much more cozy in the background. And we use that as a kind of information, reference.
So, because I also can imagine that you must encounter a lot of feedback from, people that like, that they have this misconception about Middle Ages and maybe even more specifically about 15th century. Like, what did you encounter the most? I think, like, as that people were like, oh, you got this wrong, but that you are actually having it historically accurate. It's just people have this misconception.
I think there are many things that actually blend together through these all years, because it happens that many people found some exactly misconception. Then I followed some kind of research, and I was like in the beginning having some kind of a doubts, but then I found out exactly that it maybe wasn't like the people say. It's like right now you can doubt everything because you got this social media, but actual research, like when you get deepen and deepen and deepen, you will get to this point when the same thing has so many contradictory theses that you never find like the proper answer. But definitely what I was like searching, I think after first game, because there was like this, it was one of the first like responses after first game, even beta. I think it wasn't even like released yet. The guy wrote to us like, oh my God, you got white hen. There were in white hen at that time, and I was like, oh my goodness, right? Like,
white what? Sorry?
Hen. Like
like the chicken?
Yeah. And I was like, And I figured out, yes, definitely, like in Czech Republic at that time, the most popular was like, it's like a kind of a much more like goldenish, reddish kind of feather-like. But, and of course, guys immediately changed, like, no white hens. And I was like, but wait. And I started to look not only in manuscripts, where I found a lot of like showing white chicken, and that there are of course like different breeds and so, but what is actually so natural, it's that you have like this kind of a genes that are sometimes mixing, and you got this albinism, right? So it happens that they are white, even if the breed is this or that. So I started like, guys, maybe don't overreact so much. I really see this, or can be this darkened and something. So then, everything reverted. And it's like, okay. But then, of course, again, I saw that, when people in our company, when they are doing this like settling, then, of course, you put it some kind of to the system randomly. So then, of course, it generates right now like maybe half of them white. And then it's like, okay, maybe it should be a little bit less. But you cannot control it. But you also cannot say that they weren't, and things like that. And and there is like this kind of a things. There was like people writing to us that we should have other shoes, or like that. I think after right now the KC2, there was like comments, why in Kuttenberg there is so much of mud. Like, why so much mud? Because city should be like you should be having this cobbles and stuff. But really, truly, believe me, at that time I really checked it, and like in Prague they started just making these covers, but in Kuttenberg not yet. So I really tried to like follow that, and I was actually like giving advice to many of people in our art department to really like not make it actually at that stage still quite muddy because of the rain and everything. And I don't know why people think that Kuttenberg should be already at that time super developed. It's like, still, come on, I know maybe in France, Paris, but it's still Kuttenberg, it's still Bohemia, it's still a little bit different situation. So I think this is the small things. I understand that people also from around the world, they try to look at it from their perspective. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that must be probably, because it is like, I think the general, like what you can encounter, it's like that, first of all, people see Middle Ages as like one period that is all like squashed together. So like they don't see the differences between 10th century and 15th century, even though it's like 500 years difference. And also exactly the location, like it was a different culture if you go outside of Bohemian Kingdom. And
this is actually a very interesting subject. I think really not many people realize that. Very often I come across that they give me references from, for example, England or Italy. And again, this is a huge misconception about how Bohemia looked at that time if we compare it with these kind of references, because this, like, Italy at the same time was so much more progressive with the fashion, with architecture, with the situation, like, you know, in the church and everything. And England, like, again, it's separated island. It would have totally different, inspiration and way. Like, of course, there is some international market and exchange and everything, but still not at that size that it would go, especially when we were doing first game, like to the Sazau, you know, like Kuttenberg, it was already like kind of a big city. But really, if people were trying to convince me that in Rate people should have been having like Italian clothing, I was like, come on, like really? No chance. Like, maybe like, who am I, like, right now to judge? But not very probable, I would say. So yeah,
I think, like, for me, I really enjoyed that the world that you showed us. It's quite colorful, even though with blue color, but but it's because I think, like, especially for movies, people expect that Middle Ages were all mud and nothing else. Everyone was dirty, everything was muted. If you know, like paintings on the walls, that something that you don't see in movies almost at all. So it's nice to see a piece of media that actually shows a little bit different side of Middle Ages. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, in that regard, we tried exactly to show, and that this is also it's very nice time of the year, right? We show it when there is like some time between spring and the summer, so you should feel like there's everything, you know, breathing with the color and blooming and sparkling, and it's not just like this ugly gray mud of, you know, winter and sorrow time, depression, something. Yeah.
So you talked way in the beginning of the podcast about Henry and how he's son of a blacksmith and how he embarks on this journey to change his fate, and how it was historically accurate for people in 15th century to move the social ladder. Like, you were born exactly, if you were born a son of a blacksmith, what were your options?
Well, that's a very difficult subject, because I, as a historian, would say that it would be very, very difficult for him to actually leave the Skalitz and go on his journey on his own and become all of that warrior and like, important person, even if he was still like a second, like, would say, a friend of Hans Capone, who is like a noble. Very, very unlikely that would happen. He was still, like, everyone in the village was still owned by the master that was there. And if there was, like, there are some examples of people changing place because of the migration that was happening at that time in colonization, but it was very often decision that was made based on some kind of money and agreement on special letters that were also signed and, with some seals from their masters, or that it was like actually an agreement between master and master that there one is sending the other one the people. They were like a little bit, I don't want to say like slaves because that's not the time of the period, but still they were in some ownership of somebody else. And the same was regarding the products they made. Yeah, like the blacksmith wasn't actually making like sword or weapon for himself, right? If he wasn't the blacksmith that is in the city and he is like joining the guild, he wouldn't be having the right to even like have it at home, right? So these are different things that we make just to make this story a little bit more believable or like attractive. But of course, because the moment where this is kind of a spoiler, when he's shifting his class because of his father, because he's finding who his father really is, then definitely we are facing some kind of a game changer of class and social position. So that gives him a little bit of place for manipulation. But still, I think in real world, it wouldn't be so kind of a privilege. I think there were still a lot of bastards that were born and their noble father really didn't care about that. Yeah. So that we have to take a little bit with a distance. And still, you know, like Henry is like a kind of a figure that everyone would love to like still join, because exactly he has this amazing opportunity to go through all of that medieval times to show it. And if he would just stay this blacksmith's son and we would just follow him from this position when he's only a peasant, definitely we wouldn't be able to see so much more. And that's why we give him this kind of a trust and we gave him that a little bit more from life by changing his position, by a little bit, you know, modificating his life journey, make it much more, you know, I also don't want to say fairy tale because it's not a fairy tale, but a little bit more of luck. Yeah, that he was actually noticed, that he's actually praised for being a hero. As we always hear in the stories and all of the legends, that there are these simple people and suddenly they really make some really hero acts and they are lifted in that society, in that, you know, social classes. So... Yeah, that.
I mean, there's like a lot of like, I would love to, I'm like thinking about time and like how much we have to talk about, like when it comes to exactly the research of like everyday life of in 15th century. Like, for example, we were talking with Vasek that makes a podcast with me here. And he was like saying like, oh, ask about the dogs, like how it was with dogs. And there were so many things. Like I would love to also talk about food and stuff. So let's make it. I think like I'm gonna have to like do some sacrifices, but let's make Vasek happy, and let's talk a little bit about dogs.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
So, how was it in 15th century? Were they common as a pets or in villages? Was it just like common part of every village, some stray dogs, and how did you get the information about that?
Well, there are still quite few references from the research that was done based on the remains in the ground, what kind of animals were exactly on the countryside. And I cannot say that there were dogs everywhere. That's not maybe entirely true. But there were found so many remains that show us that not only there were dogs that were like... around like common people, like making just their duty as a warden, but especially like in this noble society or city, much more like, there were already people that were responsible for breeding special dogs for hunting. And that means that we are at the stage when these domesticated animals are starting to divide into the one that are also much more noble, and these are that are for common people. So, because I was firstly really trying to search how this like dogs for hunting really looked like, and it showed that exactly like we have this matley in the game, that they had this proper bone shape, and it's even like drawn on many manuscripts, so we could follow it. And but there were found these remains exactly around the castles, especially like, you know, when you got this inner and outer bailies. I'm not sure about the English word, but it doesn't matter. Just outside the fortifications, that shown that common people had them, and the bones were much more shorter, irregular, different. So it means that exactly they started to also, to have just dogs that weren't super noble, that they weren't kept, just with making one breed, but they started to diverse, and they just had just these common dogs. And I think it's still quite important that we have also some kind of informations that they were done, even special like shelters for dog, especially that were trained and bred for hunting. So it means that people really tried to level up like this care for them, right? So that's already interesting. And that they had this, collars for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it also means that, that they really wanted to have something that would show that they're in some kind of ownership, and that they got, different tasks, and that they need special diet if they wanted to be, strong and everything. And that they had to be important because they are also on these wall paintings, right? So, so it shows. And slowly, when you follow like this medieval art, you will see that since I think half of the 15th century, they started to appear also on paintings of family in the cities. And the dogs there are much more smaller. Of course, again, then we are facing this location problem, because mostly of the paintings from half of the 15th century showing us day-to-day life of not nobles, but just like burghers and people from town, they are mostly from Netherlands, right? Or like France, Netherlands. Yeah, so a little bit more to the west than from Bohemia. But already, like, we can see on these paintings that they got dog, and this is like a symbol, of course, also about like they use it a lot of the symbol in the paintings, but also because it was important part of the house. We can see it in the scenes with the also taverns, that the dogs are running around eating like, some rest of the food. They are outside when people are dancing, and they are by the households when you have like by the shepherds. Right. So I think there was pretty big amount of them still.
Yeah. So they were definitely part of everyday life. Yeah. So also exactly like I mentioned food, like how did that research went? Like I was surprised by watermelon, to be honest, that they were growing it. Many colleagues were like coming like, really? And it's like, yes, really. And actually there are research and showing us that actually here in Bohemia and even in Poland and upper parts, there were still growing melons. They weren't as reddish as we see it right now in the inside, because that was changing through the time, of course, of some kind, again, like genes mixing and everything. But they were there, and there were lots of fields, and they were really kind of a common food there. And like the food, I can imagine that, again, like you need to have, you look for inspiration for some manuscripts and paintings, but also I guess people wrote about food, but if they did, it was probably the nobility, right? Like
yes, it's always, unfortunately, the first sources that we have, they are mostly from monasteries, so very rich clergy, or from the nobles, or later on a little bit when people were having this kind of a memoirs or some kind of a relation where they are meeting the travelers, like some kind of merchants that are having the fruits or like spices or like, something interesting with them. Then, of course, you can have this kind of relation, and that the noble is like meeting this kind of a, trade caravan, and he's saying, oh, he got this and this, and where you got it from, or is it here? And maybe sometimes they start to breed it on some, common grounds as well. So, yeah.
Also, like, how did you approach the research when it comes to warfare? Like in the game, again, I can imagine that must be like one of the things where like you have to take compromises because it's a game and it needs to be fun.
Yeah, so this was actually quite fun because a lot of museums still got a lot of artifacts to share with. And since we have this digitalization, we can really access a lot of this kind of, weapon that are actually shown and armor in the museums that are maybe not so accessible for everyone at, just here and there. And because most of them, they are made from metal, they survived in a quite good shape still till our times. So we could follow this up, we could see that, we can measure that. And although exactly, like we had to follow some kind of rules and restrictions to make it like for our game purposes, still the variety was kind of wide in comparison with, for example, wooden furniture. So we could rely on that, and we could focus on some kind of a symbolism that is also visible on like paintings or like on heraldry, which is also like much better kept in history than the other things. And it made us, it gave us much bigger opportunity to make this big amount of interesting weapon and to show it and present it for the players.
So when it comes to hygiene and medicine, that's like, again, like we talked about it, like in movies, it's usually a thing that is like portrayed a very extreme way. And I think the game like has a little twist to it because exactly you have to keep yourself constantly clean and you use medicine quite a lot, and it's like a lot of like herbal medicine. So again, like how did the research look for medicine and hygiene?
Well, these are things that are also quite well documented because there is a lot of information still that was collected in monasteries and they kept it in a really good condition to have some kind of, tips and like this information about herbs and treatment and everything. And there is also a lot of drawings of how they made the diagnostics and how they approach all of it. So that was also quite nice to see and follow. But this is exactly when we were talking about the things that I had to like open eyes of people about something. Exactly. It was about how they keep the hygiene like in the countryside. Yeah. Because, okay, you got some baths in the city and this is documented as well on many, many manuscripts, illustrations and everything. But we really have sources like written down. Like these are the books from the cities where you got some kind of a rights for the people living there, that the owners of baths, they're obliged to open the baths not only for the people who pay for it, but once in a week they're obliged to give it to the people, like to beggars and to all of the people that are poor, because of the danger of upcoming diseases. And that was like much more like a thing that was given strictly from up to keep the hygiene, exactly, not because of the smell or look, but because of this like fear of coming again, the plague and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So these are actually written law, and we can also like follow that many people didn't know like exactly like how then they did it in the village. And what is funny, really believe me, that in the village they very often just swam in the lakes, rivers and everything, and maybe even much more often they were cleaner than the people in the city who didn't have the source of the water so close.
I think that is like exactly we were discussing the misconception of Middle Ages, and I think in a lot of ways, like people expect that exactly they were so dark and gritty and nasty. And also, for example, regarding treatment of women, I think like a lot of it came, like the negative came like later on, like in 18th, 19th century. Then, and like we have that perception from that time instead of the actual Middle Ages, because that is actually, again, like another question, like when it comes to the, the role of medieval woman in Bohemia. And I can imagine that it wasn't so bad as people can think. Like if you think about Middle Ages, I'm not saying that like women would be equal, obviously not, but
Yeah, well, definitely our modern perception is not the best way to understand it. Because in the medieval time, it was much more about your role in the society and your obligations rather than on thinking of how do you feel and you grow and your like emotions. We really need to realize that very often, even if that seems to us a little bit drastic or like sharp and strict, the people at the time really much more focused on things like basics, again, like to have food, to have a roof over their head, to be warm, not to really like think, oh, I really wish to change my little village for the big city and become the writer. Like really, I don't think so that this is the thing that we should focus on while looking at the women. I'm not saying that I know how they would feel about the lack and everything and what they thought. Nobody can actually find that right now. But definitely there was totally different situation at that time and their position. And it doesn't mean that they were also treated without the respect, because it was shown in a different way, right? Still, many people don't know that actually women who became like a widow in the city, they were pretty decisive person and respected, and they could really lead their businesses after death of their, husbands. And it really shown that there was some kind of a space for them to still be like seen and heard and everything. But yes, it was the time when still that was different position of religion, different law, and but I don't think so that we should judge it from our position today.
yeah. So when you look at Kingdom Come Deliverance and compare it to movies and TV shows from, let's say, the whole Middle Ages, how do you feel about it? Like, how would you compare it?
Well, I had this one thought, and I'm keeping it in my mind because that's the thing, I guess, showing how KCD is different and just how come that for me it's like much more attractive. And although some movies are super interesting, funny, entertaining, beautiful, that's not the deal. It's just that it's still passive way of looking at the medieval times. So for me, it's the same like reading book, joining school, lecture and something. You just take it because somebody is explaining to you. And here, you actually have this kind of opportunity once in a lifetime to get active, to live with it, to understand the context exactly. I know that it's not perfect, but still it's changing so much your point of view when you are finally in it. With Henry on his side, and with having his hands, you can really like being active, not passive, while seeing the medieval times, and that's a huge difference.
Definitely. So when you basically spend like in 15th century for 10 years, over 10 years. So if you could, we have a magical genie here. If you could start working on a different game that is historically accurate, but it could be from any time of history, what would you pick?
That is a very difficult question, but definitely I had this period of time which I really love, and this is like ancient Greece. And already I know many people are working on it, and so they are taking this subject on their plate, but I really loved it. I would really love to, again, but get exactly this much more accurate, like really follow many things of the combat and the social situation, fashion, diet, everything. I would love to like get very deep into it, and this all spiritual, situation when the faith is like really being, judged by so many gods. Oh, that would be really awesome.
Well, I definitely enjoyed Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so like another game from that time, I'm all for it. So one last question that I don't know if you will be able to answer. Let's see, but the whole podcast that we have, it's focusing. Like the future of it is definitely in Hussite Wars. Mm-hmm. We're slowly getting there. And obviously, Kingdom Come being set in 1302, 1303, it's not that far. And, there are some connections, very obvious connections. So, if, let's say, sometime in future too, Kingdom Come will get to Hussite part, what would be the things that you would be excited the most?
Oh, I actually, right now, when you said about it, I would love to make a game about Hussite Wars. That would be quite awesome. Yeah, but I also would love to exactly like get from this maybe less known side of it, where you can actually you should be actually a woman, mm-hmm. and to show it, because many people don't know, but the warriors at that time, they really had a big support from their wives and whole families going with them through all of that, events in the whole Czech Republic. And I would really love to like wake up in this kind of a camp when the things are, like these old duties are divided and there is like really big strategy plan, but you never know who is like on your side and who is going to like change it or whom to trust. That's what we quite of it have in Kingdom Come, mm-hmm. where you get into the conflict of this, big players, which I mean like the kings and the royals, but you also get in the middle of this like clergy, mm-hmm. and mm-hmm. their words, and these leaders also of Hussites who are also like, then of course splitting. It's like in every group, right? You suddenly have some kind of a very strong personalities, and there are two of them, and which one to follow? Yeah, will you follow just the iconic one, Zizka, or maybe to somebody else? Maybe there is someone that is already like making new rebel way of. Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Definitely. Like it sounds great. If you're interested more in all of that Asha said here,
call me.
Yeah, and if you want to do a Hussite game or ancient Greece. All right. Well, thank you so much, Asha. It was fascinating. I wish we had more time, but I'm already checking time here, and it's.
I don't want to maybe look.
But it was great. I really enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed the game. If you didn't check it out, I would definitely recommend it to you. Even though if you're not gamer, I would. We already mentioned it in our previous bonus episodes, but definitely even just check the videos or trailers from the game. You will get the sense of the era, I think, really nicely, as much as the houses maybe are not exactly historically accurate. Yes. You definitely get the feeling of that time, and it's a great game. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for invitation and all of that warm words and everything you said about game. It's really heartwarming, and I also invite you all to check it.
All right, have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
A big thank you to everyone who's helping make this podcast happen, especially to Bohumil Červený and Martin Baláš, our Jan Žižka's own patrons. Thanks so much, guys.